Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Daniel James, and as always, if you're new here, welcome. Today, I want to talk about something that is a lot more common than people realize, and that is seasonal onset disorder. I want to talk about what it is. I want to give you 3 practical tips on how you can improve your mood going into the winter months. If you're living in the UK, you'll know the clock's just changed over the last weekend, and because of this, the nights are going to start to draw in. And people's energy starts to drop, they start to feel a bit low. And yes, although we have a few things like Halloween and Christmas that can get us excited, a lot of people still get stuck in this sort of low funk. And today I want to give you these 3 tips, but also give you practical things that you can do to implement them as we're going into these darker months. But I want to start off by talking about what is this seasonal onset disorder. Well, it's categorized as a type of depression triggered by the seasonal change. And here are some statistics about seasonal onset disorder from the UK. So it actually affects about 1 in 20 UK adults. It could be higher than that because a lot of people actually don't report it, or it can also go undiagnosed. Weirdly, because I wanted to get some facts on this, and I didn't know this, but men are more likely to be diagnosed with seasonal onset disorder than women. However, women are more likely to report low moods in winter. So although some stuff I'm going to cover is specifically related to seasonal onset disorder, the tips I'm going to give will actually help with these low moods going into these winter months. And it can first appear between the age of 20 and 30, but it can develop at any age. So what are the 3 things we can do to start to get ourselves out of this funk when we notice our mood dipping as the nights start to draw in? So the first thing is light therapy. And this is the more common thing that you'll hear when it comes to seasonal onset disorder. I did a podcast on this a while ago related to sleep. And when I say a while ago, we're talking about 3 years now. Now, this bright light therapy, the way that it works is it helps with the circadian rhythm. So that's the body's sort of like master clock. So it's kind of like our sleep and wake cycles. So obviously when things start to go a bit squiff, especially in modern society, because we've got to think, like go back to like caveman days, when it got dark and cold, we probably weren't out working and doing things. We kind of hibernate a little bit. And this is kind of where that drive to sit by warm fire comes in over the winter months. It's because it's dark outside and it's cold, so we kind of want to stay in and protected. But this body clock that we've got can get massively disrupted around this sort of time of the year. And light therapy, which is exposure to bright light, specifically in the morning, can help us reset that circadian rhythm. It kind of helps the body go back to, actually, okay, I need to be awake now, rather than looking outside and it's dark, wet, rainy and cold. Having this bright light exposure resets the body's clock because it increases serotonin production, and serotonin production blunts melatonin production. So melatonin is the thing that makes you drowsy. So during night time when you start to get a bit drowsy and nodding off, that's because your melatonin increases. Melatonin increases, you get tired. When serotonin increases, melatonin actually drops, which is what you want. In the morning, you want your serotonin to increase, so the melatonin drops. So actually you have this drive to get out and do something. And that is what light therapy actually helps with. Basically, all to do with the sleep-wake cycle in a nutshell. Now, the recommended exposure is 10,000 lux. Now, lux is the brightness of the light. So lux, it sounds a bit crazy and high, but again, you can get these light things off Amazon. They're pretty cheap. I'll put in the description below the one that I specifically use. Again, no money for you using it at all, but it's the one that I personally do use because this is something I do struggle with. I recommend that you do 20 to 30 minutes daily, and in the mornings is most effective. And using light boxes filters out the harmful UV rays. So again, make sure you're getting a good quality one rather than just random things that you see that aren't actually regulated. So that's number 1. Number 2, vitamin D supplements. Now, vitamin D supplementation is something that I always recommend people take all year round, especially when I was in the fitness industry. Vitamin D would be one of the supplements that I recommend people take. But when it comes to vitamin D, you don't want to take vitamin D. It wants to be vitamin D3, and it wants to be with vitamin K2. So D3 with K2. Once again, I'll link that in the description below so you can see the one I personally use. Once again, I make no money from it, but it's just the one I use. Now, low vitamin D levels have been associated with this seasonal onset disorder because the low sunlight exposure, and the sunlight is where we normally get the vitamin D from. So obviously in the cloudy days that we're having now in the winter, you don't get much exposure to D3. Now, with this natural D3 production, it's been shown that up to 80% of seasonal onset disorder people that struggle with this have low vitamin D, and this deficiency correlates with the symptom severity. So the lower the vitamin D is, the more severe the symptoms are. And obviously, as we sort of said, because it's cloudy outside, the vitamin D blood levels actually drop during the winter months anyway. So we want to try and supplement with it as much as we can. Now, once we spoke about serotonin in the first part. We said that the light exposure helps with serotonin. We've got the serotonin production, melatonin, the sleep hormone, is down. And vitamin D actually helps with the production of serotonin. Serotonin is also a mood regulating neurotransmitter, meaning it's something in the brain that actually helps you feel a bit better. On top of this, it can help with things like dopamine, and it can also help with the stress response of the body. And for me, that's one of the biggest things, because we've got stresses anyway, and when it starts to get dark and cold, like again, our thoughts, if we get into that depressive state, again, what's a depressive state? We're feeling low, our mood's low. And when we're in that sort of headspace, we can get that depressive thought cycle. I've missed out in the three things here about controlling our negative thoughts and our thought patterns, because that's something we speak about almost weekly. So obviously that's a big key thing of helping you navigate the seasonal onset disorder, but I've not mentioned it here. But obviously with this vitamin D supplementation, actually regulating the stress response can massively help, because if you're highly stressed anyway, again, especially if you've got a job, you've got kids, again, your own business, whatever it is, the stress levels are going to be high. And if your stress levels are high and your mood's down, that is then a recipe for disaster when it comes to those thought patterns. Now, a study has shown that vitamin D3 supplementation can reduce the symptoms by up to 50%, but it may take 2 to 3 weeks for you to actually start to notice visible improvements. Now, right now, we're not really in the thick of the darkness. So for me, I'll be getting on the supplementation as soon as you can, so that you get that buffer into your system. It's also interesting, I didn't know this when I was kind of doing more research into this, to make sure I give the actual facts rather than just my opinion on this, because these are all things that I do, but want to back it up with stuff. Vitamin D3 is more effective when it's combined with light therapy. So the light therapy we spoke about in point 1, if you combine that with the D3, it actually massively helps. Now, when it comes to K2, the reason why you want to take the D3 with the K2 is that when you're metabolizing calcium, because you're taking D3, it actually improves calcium metabolism, meaning moving around the body. K2 actually helps the body put this calcium into the bones rather than into the arteries. So again, it helps keep everything nice and clear and put things where it's supposed to go. It helps with anti-inflammatory stuff. So again, really good for overall health. And it also reduces the risk of D3 side effects. Now, the side effects of vitamin D3 are very, very minimal. So it's making sure that we are always doing our own research rather than listening to some random person on YouTube. But the side effects are very minimum. When you take it with K2, it reduces those side effects even more. Now, the protocol for this is taking about 2,000 IU, which is the measurement of vitamin D3. So 2,000 IU of vitamin D3. Again, if that's on the higher side, you can drop it down to 1,000. So 1,000 is kind of like the standard that I'd go all year round. And when it comes to winter months, I go to 2,000. Once again, make sure you're checking with your doctors and stuff like that before you start randomly taking things. And again, the link for the tablet I take is down below. Now, the final point here on how to navigate seasonal onset disorder and these darker months is regular exercise. Now, we all know about the mood boosting effects of exercise. Yet when it comes to winter months, as I said at the top of the episode here, is a lot of people want to withdraw. They want to just sit by the fire. They want to eat comfort foods, because again, we kind of get into hibernation mode. However, we've got to fight that urge and actually get outside to exercise, because physical activity, as we know, improves mood and reduces symptoms of depression, and that includes the things that are associated with seasonal onset disorder, especially for exercising outside. And when I say exercise, it could even be just going for a walk. And yes, the sun is not breaking through the clouds. However, just the very act of getting outside can massively help us when it comes to our mood and everything that goes into that. When it comes to exercise, as we know, it massively helps with our neurotransmitters, meaning our brain. Once again, serotonin, the feel-good hormone. We want that, and that increases when we do the exercises. On top of that, it boosts dopamine levels. And finally, you get the runner's high, which is basically the endorphins. I'm not saying you've got to go out and do running, but any sort of exercise, you get a high out of doing exercise. So what we're trying to do with all these things is just break that negative pattern, that feeling low and negative. So actually, if we can do something that gives us that bit of a high, gets us feeling better, then that's only going to be beneficial. And as we know, exercise improves our sleep quality. And once again, I've mentioned it multiple times on the show that I struggle massively with my mental health if my sleep is disrupted. I can have about 2 nights bad sleep, and then after that, I massively notice my ability to handle those negative thoughts. So getting that exercise will help you regulate that sleep, which is so, so important. You want to be doing it for at least 30 minutes, a minimum of 30 minutes a day. And it doesn't have to be going to the gym. It doesn't have to be running. It can just be going outside, going for a walk. So it doesn't have to be anything crazy. But implementing these 3 strategies, along with all the stuff we talk about when it comes to navigating those negative thoughts and getting ourselves out of that negative thought pattern and breaking that cycle, those 3 things will help you navigate the winter months. If you or someone that you know struggles with this and you find this useful, like and share the show. Get the message out there to help as many people as possible. Until next time, take it easy.